I'm going to turn it right over to the chair of this session, Dr. Timothy Tavis. Tim is a psychologist, someone I've known for many years from his Notre Dame studies, but he will introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Wally. The noted Tibetan Buddhist Lama, scholar, and poet Khenpo Sevang Dongyal Rinpoche is fond of saying that the Buddhist approach is known for being good for us and good for others. And the four speakers that we have with us this afternoon are going to be sharing with us the approaches that they've found in their corporate roles, that the way of approaching problems that produce good results for them and also good results for others. Having said that, our first speaker is Kevin McKnight. Kevin has spent, I believe, his entire career with Alcoa, moving through their product safety, environmental remediation, and other spheres in the company. He is now based in Pittsburgh and is accountable for their sustainability efforts and EHS. And he's going to be sharing with us some part of the many activities that Alcoa is involved in consonance with the Global Compact. Thank you.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay? I'm a bit of a roamer, so I would prefer to stand out here. I'm the only mining company that's here. So Bishop Dowling, I want to assure you we don't mine platinum. We mine bauxite. We actually invented the aluminum industry. In 1888, Charles Martin Hall discovered a process that allowed aluminum to drop out of solution. It's an electrolytic process, and that's where the aluminum industry really began, and Alcoa was there at the beginning. It's 120 years ago. So we think we are a very sustainable company. We signed the UN Global Compact in 2009. Why did we wait so long to sign the Global Compact? We heard some discussion this morning. A fellow from Microsoft talked about it. In reality, our lawyers didn't want us to sign it. They were concerned about it. They thought there were risks associated with it. We looked at the principles in the Global Compact and we said, you know, we live by these principles. These are things we do every day. This is part of our DNA. This is part of what we believe in as a business. Why wouldn't we sign these? So September of 2009, we took the plunge and we signed for the first time. Why do we do these things? Partly it's because it is the right thing to do. But I've been telling students for the last, seems like a couple of days now, that it's not just because it's the right thing to do. It's because we have determined that it is absolutely necessary for business success. So if we didn't do these things, we don't think we would get the opportunities to operate around the world in the places that we get to operate. It's really important to our business success. Just a little bit about the company. We are the world leader in aluminum mining, refining, smelting, and fabrication. We have about 26% of the world's supply of bauxite and alumina. So we think we have a pretty good position around the world in terms of the metal and the material. We have 60,000 employees in about 31 countries. 2010 revenue of 21 billion. That's down from about 32 billion in 2008. So we certainly were impacted by the economic crisis. Markets, aerospace, automotive, packaging, building and construction, commercial transport, etc. So we basically provide into every one of those markets. We define sustainability very simply. It's using our values to build financial success, environmental excellence, and social responsibility in partnership with all of our stakeholders, including the communities in which we operate. And we strive to be sustainable and to do good in those communities. And one of the messages that I will provide to the students is It's not essential today to park your social conscience if you want to make money and be successful in business. Most good businesses today rely enormously on the social conscience of their employees to be successful. So don't assume that that's a prerequisite if you're going to go and make a lot of money and do well in a business environment. In fact, I think it's essential that you bring your social conscience today, because if you don't bring it, you probably won't last very long in business. Just a few highlights from a sustainability perspective. We created an Alcoa Foundation in 1952. We're not nearly as good as Father Hesburgh. I heard the statistics last night about the Notre Dame endowment. It's impressive. We give about $50 million a year from the Alcoa Foundation, and that's what I would consider philanthropy. We do our best to engage in philanthropy around the world, in the communities where we operate, in a manner to support the business operations, but never to directly support or benefit Alcoa. What we do outside of the foundation is what we believe is necessary for the success of our business. In 1993, we did our first environmental reporting. In 2000, we set our first long-term goals, our 2020 goals. We have substantial impact on the environment as part of our operations. We know it's essential that we minimize that impact, and so we set very aggressive long-term goals, what we consider to be stretch goals, and we work very hard to achieve them. We published our first sustainability report in 2002. Just this past year, we elected a chief sustainability officer for the first time. I'm proud to tell you that it's not an environmental person, it's a business person. It's somebody whose role really is to integrate all aspects of sustainability across the company. His #1 mission is to ensure that sustainability gets deeply embedded in the business strategy of every business. And he focuses all of his energies on the business side. He leaves the EHS stuff to me. 2010, we updated our strategic goals. We did that because in many cases we had already achieved our 2020 goals. We were way ahead of schedule, and we decided that if we were going to stretch ourselves for the future, we really needed new goals. And one of the things we did in 2010 that I think is really important, and I'll speak to this a little bit later, we actually required every business to develop what we call a sustainability roadmap. The roadmap says, what am I going to do over the next 10 and 20 years to achieve the goal in my business? So we made them go through the process of really thinking hard about how they were going to get there. In some cases, they have the ideas to get them there. In other cases, there are gaps. Where there are gaps, their requirement is to come back on a regular basis and fill those gaps. It's a really important part of the process. You can't just set long-term goals. You have to require people to develop the plans to get there, and then you have to measure them on a regular basis. So about 2 quarters ago, I instituted a process where during the quarterly business reviews, they bring their 2020 plans, and the CEO and the CFO of the company and the other business leaders review their 2020 plans and where they are, and they challenge them in terms of where they are not making sufficient progress to reach their goals. So really important part of the overall process. Now, I was very impressed when I heard the Nestle fella talk today. Really impressive what that company is doing, and my hat's off to them for their work around the world. I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective. Mine is going to be more community-based, and I'm going to try to show you some examples of what we are doing in the communities where we operate around the world to make progress on Millennium Development Goals. We take this very seriously. We try to work on those things that make sense for us as a business. What does that mean? To me, it means that in order for our business to be successful, we need to achieve certain things in the communities where we operate. Many times it's capacity building, training, health education, health provision. Sometimes it is the kinds of things that build the economic environment. But all the time, it is about economic development. The foundation of how we do this in the communities where we operate is really around fostering and ensuring economic development consistent with the Millennium Development Goals. Historically, I'll be honest with you, my company used to focus on two things: making money for shareholders and complying with the law. I suspect most companies were kind of in that camp. What sustainability really has done, I think, for the corporate world is it's really provided an on-ramp to social endeavors, emphasizing the common good, doing the things that companies were in some cases doing, but not focusing on as keenly as they needed to. And today I think that most of my business leaders, I wouldn't tell you 100% of them, but certainly in the 75, 80% range, they really do believe that doing good is essential for business success. And we focus on shared value creation. We focus on finding objectives that are shared with civil society, with NGOs, with other stakeholders where we operate, to ensure that we don't end up in a position where we're always providing, but rather that we create a framework that allows us to develop something that is sustainable, that can exist beyond Alcoa. So when we leave the region or we leave the area, that something will stay behind that will be much more substantial than what was there when we came. So my sense is that we're fulfilling our responsibility while being profitable for shareholders. And I'm going to talk to you about 4 specific areas. The first one is interesting, Juruti in Brazil. We opened a bauxite mine in the middle of the Amazon rainforest 2 years ago. Why did we do that? What were we thinking? There was a lot of bauxite in the Amazon rainforest, and there was an opportunity to do this right and do it well and provide sustainable development for the region that was sorely needed in this part of the world. I'm going to talk to you about Suriname, a small country in the northern part of South America, where when we were doing some health assessments in country, we discovered that the Amerindians were much more susceptible to cervical cancer than other populations in general, about 10 times more susceptible. So we worked in partnership with some other NGOs to really set up health clinics and to provide screening and treatment for Amerindians. In Jamaica, we're building a lot of local capacity in country. There's some enormous issues, some enormous problems in Jamaica. I'm going to talk to you about how we're trying to address those consistent with what we're trying to drive in our business operation. And then finally, in Australia, I'm going to talk to you about an environmental project where we're really trying to restore the Jarrah forest. So first, Juruti. Juruti as a region is home to about 47,000 people. 65% of them live in small communities around the Amazon River. It's basically a subsistence population, agricultural, fishing, Brazil nut extraction, various industries. The average per capita income is about $23 a month, certainly below the poverty line. And illiteracy rate of about 21%, so relatively high. Our project was basically a bauxite mine, a port on the Amazon River, and a railway from the place where we were mining to the port where we were exporting the bauxite to several of our refinery operations in southern Brazil. So the first thing we did in Juruti is we went in and did a very, very comprehensive assessment of the current situation. We wanted to understand what the significant metrics were, what the area really looked like. And the first thing we discovered is that the government in that particular area was very weak. Basically, they had a mayor and a financial person, and they were very close to the vest, and they were very immature in terms of their understanding of how to provide infrastructure into the region. So we basically developed a Juruti council, And we went around the area and we found 15 council members who represented the substantial interests of that community in terms of the Works Council, in terms of the Trades Council, in terms of various NGOs who were already operating in the region. And we put the government on the council as a seat on the council, which really upset the government, to be honest, because they thought that they should be a super stakeholder. They thought that they should have a more significant, a more prominent role. And we convinced them ultimately that this was the right way to move forward in terms of driving sustainable development for the region. We also set up a fund at the front end. And we told them we were not going to continue to add money to this fund every year. We told them that this was a way to start, and we needed to find opportunities for micro development. We needed to find ways to really build the structural stability in the community. And we started to talk about the initiative. So we got a really good, broad cross-section of stakeholders in a room on a very regular basis. And it took about 18 months till that group really started to work together effectively. And of course, a lot of leadership or guidance from us in terms of helping them to understand where they needed to put their priorities. Fundamentally, they finally got back to the issues of infrastructure, potable water, healthcare, schooling, those kinds of things that, frankly, for us, are absolutely essential to support our business interests in that region over the next 80 years. But it was also critical for the community to really put the right foundation in place to be able to build on. We constructed some hospitals, we constructed some schools. Prior to this hospital, people in the community, the 46,000 residents, most of the time they would travel by boat 12 hours to get medical care. We put the first hospital in the community. We're following it up with another hospital in the community. We constructed a school room with classrooms providing elementary education. We constructed the first legal complex in the community. They'd never had a place to meet before. So we used this as the place where the council would meet on a regular basis. Pretty soon the mayor started to meet there, put an office in there. We started to provide some support for him in terms of what he needed to do his job. And then we started to provide some things like deep water wells, the development of new business training programs. The biggest issue we have in this part of the world is we get there and we have an enormous amount of work to do, but there is no capability in the region to really do the work. So it's imperative that we start to train up the local citizens to be able to do the jobs. What we most want is we want to turn the facility over to the local citizens. We do not want to have to bring very expensive resources in from out of country to do the work. I mean, that's not a sustainable business operation from our perspective. And we plan to be there for 80 years before the mining runs out. So as fast as possible, we're trying to build the capability in the community to be able to do the critical jobs. Just some more pictures. I want to switch now to Suriname. So Suriname, there it is on the map. As I mentioned, we discovered in some initial health screening that the Amerindian women were much more susceptible to cervical cancer. The Suriname interior is home to about 60,000 people. They're very scattered. They live in very, very small villages, usually near rivers or tributaries where they are doing some subsistence farming and basically fishing. Access to cervical screening is almost non-existent in those areas, and when there were positive tests, the women basically had to go to Paramaribo, the only large city on the coast, to really get treatment. So in the interest of partnering and finding the right people to partner with, we partnered with an outfit called See and Treat. And through the foundation, we really provided a substantial amount of support to that organization. And what we basically did is we set up medical clinics in the interior. So we set up about 57 different medical clinics. And the goal is really to train and equip people with the tools and the training that they need to be able to provide treatment where the people live. We train the healthcare workers. The patients with positive diagnosis are getting immediate treatment right away. Those who cannot be treated with cryotherapy, which is the immediate treatment, basically get referred to Paramaribo, the main city. And the women who test negative initially get screened again after a couple of years. So we're trying to get them into a regular screening program. In 2009 and 2010, we basically had about 350 women who received examinations. 45% had never, ever been screened before. So again, the incident rate substantially above the normal population, had never even had the opportunity for a screening in the past. In Jamaica, we operate mines and refineries in country. In 2010, we employed a little bit less than 900 people, paid about $28 million in salary and benefits, spent about $95 million on local contract services and supplies. And our approach to economic development in Jamaica is really education in the communities to ensure that the local talent pool is there and is ready to work for us. So it's a good example, I think, of where a business need lines up really well with the Millennium Development Goal. We provide career enhancement programs. We focus really hard on education in Jamaica. It's a really serious issue in Jamaica. Most people do not get adequate education in country. We have a documentation skills program that helps the residents improve their literacy and their numeracy skills. We have mentoring programs. We have about 30% of our workforce that are actively mentoring youth in the community. So that's a pretty significant commitment privately by our employees. We don't force them to do this, but we strongly encourage them to do it. And thankfully, a lot of them have a really strong social sense of need and have been very, very active in the community, training up young people to improve their lot in life. The entrepreneurship program provides loans basically to small micro businesses to establish viable businesses. We provide training with respect to how do you set up a business, how do you operate a business, how do you manage your cash, how do you manage your needs and investments. And we're creating excellence centers in the local communities as well. Jamaica is really big on sports. As a country, there's a tremendous amount of national pride in their sporting teams. And so we understand that when we talk to the residents, when we talk to the stakeholders. And so it's really important that as you develop your programs, you lean into the things that are really important in the communities where you are operating. So we've learned a long time ago that the dialogue with the local stakeholders is really critical to ensuring that we are meeting the needs in the community as the community is expressing those needs and as they're helping us to really develop the path forward. And lastly, I'm going to talk about Australia. We have the world's largest bauxite mine in Australia, the Huntly mine. It produces about 33 million tons of bauxite annually. The issue is the Huntly mine is situated right in the middle of the Jarrah forest, which is a very sensitive ecology in Australia. And so we started out very early explaining to people that we plan to operate in the Jarrah forest in a very environmentally responsible way, and we committed to replace biodiversity 100% in the forest. We set up nurseries, and we use those nurseries to develop the seeds that we need for rehabilitation of the forest. This is a really good example of, this is mining operation, this is restoration. And we measure on a very regular basis. In fact, in 2009, we went into the rehabilitated area and measured the species rehabilitated, and we actually exceeded the annual forest average a little bit more than 100% restoration. But that's our commitment when we operate there. Local cultures and customs are not always extremely consistent with how we want to operate. But the opportunities that face companies like mine sometimes are so significant that you have to go into areas of the world that, frankly, are not necessarily consistent with your values. And so how do you operate in those parts of the world? We operate by modeling our values all the time. I saw a chart this morning that had some of the corruption indexes on it, and I noticed that some of the countries that were at the very bottom were countries where we operate, like Russia, like China, like Saudi Arabia. We signed an agreement with the Saudi Arabian government 3 years ago to develop the largest aluminum complex in the world in Saudi Arabia. We're mining in the desert. There's actually bauxite in the desert. We're mining, refining, smelting, and fabricating aluminum in this complex. It isn't built yet. It'll be built in about 2013. But we understand that the cultural differences between our company and the Middle East are significant. So how do we model our values? I mentioned to some people that 2 weeks ago, the Crown Prince invited us to a cultural exchange. They wanted us to send a delegation over from New York to visit with the ministers in Saudi Arabia to really start to understand how we were going to work together collectively going forward. And we put 10 people on an airplane to Saudi Arabia, 7 of them women. And when they arrived in Saudi Arabia, quite honestly, the government did not know how to deal with them. Initially, they didn't want them to sit in the meeting rooms. They wanted them to sit outside the meeting rooms, which is very customary in that part of the world. And we said, well, we can go home and you can come to New York and meet us, or we can meet together. So, again, it's a small example of how you have to continue to live your values wherever you operate in the world. And by doing that, little by little, I think we will influence and have impact in places where we don't necessarily fit as easily as possible. Just the last point on NGOs, I've heard it a lot today. We focus tremendously on the results. We have to focus on results. We've really moved from a philanthropy model to an investment model, where what we're trying to do is provide opportunities over a period of time. We're trying to provide the opportunity for root structures so that whatever we develop has the potential to be sustainable going forward. And that's it. Thank you.